we're going to look at one of the major tools of social conditioning. If you are familiar with my work, you will know that social conditioning is based on the polarity of fear and desire. The objective of social conditioning is to create an ego and identity which is based on thought and belief, which is both time-dependent, and also based on the polarity between fear and desire. This is how this all works. One of the things you need to participate in society is an ego, or an ego structure which is based on identity. There are various ways you can identify yourself. You can identify yourself with an ethnicity or a nationality. You can identify yourself with a gender role, with a profession or vocation, with a belief system or ideology, such as a religion or a political belief. You can identify yourself with a sports team, or as a follower of a band, a musician or celebrity. These are different ways you can identify yourself, and they all contribute to your ego or ego structure. The ego is an elaborate belief system which is based on identity and the process of identifying with various things which build or develop the ego or the self-centered me. You can identify with not just beliefs, but feelings, emotions, thoughts, places, personal possessions, and so on. Keep in mind that all these things you use to build your identity and ego are based on thought. You start developing your ego fairly early in childhood, and you continue to do so, as a result of social conditioning, pretty much throughout your life. So at some point, usually when you become an adult, you need an income of some sort. This is simply because that's how society usually works. You need an income of some sort in order to live. This is usually when you become independent and you have to maintain a home, pay bills, put food on the table, and pay for stuff. This brings money into the equation. Now you can define money in various ways, but money is essentially a measurement system for value. You would hope that someone values your time, effort and knowledge enough to pay you got your work, so in turn you can have income to spend money and invest in things that you value. What you value, of course, is a matter of opinion and, of course, ego. I'm sure you can do many wonderful things, and you know a lot of stuff. But when it comes to the world of work and income, you really do need to do something that someone else values your work enough to be willing to pay you for it. So when we are talking about money and finances, we also need to talk about need and want. Therefore, we have to talk about desire. Please keep in mind I'm using desire as an umbrella term, to mean such things as need, want, wish, expectation, motivation, and also compulsion, addiction and psychological dependency. All these things mean desire. The only difference is the degree and intensity of the desire. Need is more intense a desire than wish, while a want is not as intense as, say, a compulsion or addiction. It's rational to talk about desire when we're talking about money and finances. If a business or organization doesn't identify a need for someone to do some form of work, then there is no vacancy for a job. Similarly, we don't normally acquire money or financial assets just for the sake of having money. Even if we are just saving or accumulating money, it's usually to offset some kind of fear or insecurity. But usually we seek money to do something with it, to pay bills, or to buy something, so on some level desire is usually involved. It's at this point I want to talk about dependent arising. Dependent arising is also known as mutual arising. The basic underlying principle of dependent arising is this. As this arises, that becomes. For example, as you receive a sum of money, you either pay bills or go shopping. Paying bills or going shopping is dependent on having money, and usually having money is dependent on the ability to pay bills or go shopping. A much more modern term for this is conditionality. Often in life, when something arises or manifests, it is dependent on something else happening. It's an important mystical principle which crops up very often in life. Another clear example of dependent arising is thinking or thought. As desire manifests through thought or thinking, then so too does fear and anxiety. Similarly, as a fear manifests through thought or thinking, then so too does desire manifest. This is how thought becomes dependent on time. Thinking or thought requires permanence and continuity, but thinking or thought is neither permanent nor continuous. Thought is impermanent, and this is why we have to continue thinking. Thoughts come and go, they arise, manifest and fade. It's believed that the average person has somewhere between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day. No idea how many I statements or me statements are involved in that, but I guess there would be a significant number. So what we generally do when it comes to time is to divide time into three areas: the past, the present and the future. The past is generally what has happened, but it's also what we call the present. You see, reality, existence and being all unfold together in relationship, which we become aware of through sensory perception and the felt sense of immediate experience. So even when we are responding to something happening in the present moment, we can only respond to it once it's been recorded into memory, so what we're responding to is what we can call the immediate past. But instead of giving you a dissertation on time and time perception, what I want to talk about is the future. The future is one of the three ways we generally perceive time in a linear way. The future is very, very important when it comes to social conditioning. You see, it's not that you just have an ego and identity. What I mean here is that you don't just have an ego and identity in the present moment or the here and now. You also have a future version of the ego and identity. It started in childhood. What do you want to be when you grow up? Throughout you have been conditioned to believe in a future. But the past is just a thought in your mind, and so too is the future. It is just a possibility. A probability. Nothing more than this. But to believe in the future as reality is the illusion of becoming. You miss the unfolding nature of reality, existence and being, and just project thought onto reality to create another version of reality. You project this new reality out of imagination, which is essentially the memory. There is a very subtle difference between the unfolding of reality through existence and being on the one hand, and the becoming on the other. The becoming is the illusion. The unfolding is what is. Life contains a certain amount of jeopardy. Please understand that life and death are the two sides of existence, and just as you were born as part of the unfolding, you can also die as part of the unfolding. You can spend your life worrying about death, or you can just accept this and continue to live. But what I'm pointing out here is that the financial security you are seeking and hoping for is an illusion. Now you might think that winning the lottery and suddenly acquiring millions of pounds will give you that financial security. But this is also an illusion. Closer to the truth is that, when you have more money than you need, you have another thing to think about. You now have to think about what you're going to do with the money, what you're going to do with it, and the thinking patterns based on fear and desire continue, only on a different level. You might think that having enough money in the bank means you can leave it alone and not have to think about it. But you're underestimating the power of social and mental conditioning on your psychology. You will still be sucked into those conditioned thought patterns of desire and fear or anxiety. Now I also want to point out here that I'm not dismissing or diminishing the very real social issue of poverty. I'm not. Poverty is a very real social issue. When you don't have enough or that much money to live on, it can massively complicate your life. Poverty exacerbates the issues we've been discussing here. Your whole life becomes a puzzle where every single piece has to fit together perfectly every month. You need literally every pound of your income, and you have nothing but hope that your outgoings will be the same or less every month. That £2 saving feels like a significant victory. When that bill comes in and it's £5 more, it can often throw up another problem that you haven't thought about. Often when you are struggling with not enough money to live on, everything becomes more expensive, and you might find yourself either making up excuses or trying to buy time off other people. This creates constant stress and tension because you know that you can wake up one morning and, due to unforeseen circumstances, face an additional expense that you didn't budget for. Living in poverty can often carry with it social implications. You don't have much disposable income. If a friend in need wants to borrow money off you, You either don't have it to spare, or if you take the risk and lend the money, you need it back by a certain time. You never seem to have the opportunity to go wild, buy a round of drinks, get someone a lavish gift, or say go to a concert or some other event. Your friendships are limited. You want to do stuff, but all too often you simply can't afford to. It's a sad fact of modern society that all too often, in order to socialize in public spaces with others, you need to have money to spend. The issue you have with financial security is that you will never have financial security because financial security is a concept which exists in the future, which is another concept. This is just like the horizon, where the sky meets the ground some distance away. No matter which direction you go, how far or how fast you travel, the horizon will be just as far away from you as it was when you first noticed it. Let's unpack all this, because I assume you have, at this point in this video, enough mystical awareness to understand what is going on here. Let's start with the ego or identity, that part of you that you refer to whenever you use I or me in a sentence. It's a thought form, a concept, a story. It's not actual reality, but cultural reality. It's a concept, a belief system. The desire or need for financial security is another thought, another concept, another image, or if you prefer, a figment of your imagination. What is financial security is another concept. For one person, financial security can mean a paid-off mortgage. For another person, it can mean that the water, electricity and gas bills are paid for the month. For another person, it can be a bag of groceries and the ability to eat for a couple of days. Let's contrast this with what is real about you. Your physical body is real. Your biological needs are real. You need sleep. You need hydration or water. You need food. You need a bathroom. You need shelter. Beyond procreation, that's about it. I'm not even including sex here, because a sex life is part of the ego. Animals don't have sex lives. An elephant will have sex once every 7 years. A cat every month or so. Animals don't think about sex like humans do. When the need to procreate arises, they figure out which is male, which is female, and assume the position. Once they've shagged each other, they stop thinking about sex. Beyond the physical body, your senses are real, your awareness is real, and together with your body make up what is being. If you can wake up, breathe and pee, then you are successful at life and everything else is a bonus. All these things are actualities, so they are actually real, or what is really real. Concepts, based on thoughts, are relatively real. It's a different level of reality. It's important here to understand what money is. From one perspective, it's a social convention and tool which obviates the need for barter and exchange. This is what allows us to be specialist and focused in our lives as opposed to needing to be generalist. Money simplifies things and makes a lot of stuff a great deal more convenient. But from another perspective, money is a magical prop to connect us with what we need. There's a certain numerology involved in money, particularly with physical currency, in that only certain numbers are used in denominations, specifically 1, 5, 10 and multiples of 10. This is why you never find a £4 note or a 30p coin. So there's an element of magic involved in finance and money. But generally speaking, money has no physical reality and is a unit of measurement to denote value. Physical money and currency is just a symbol. What you might notice is that money symbolizes time or space. Money is not quite the illusion some will have you believe. The illusion is capitalism, not money. The issue with capitalism in particular is that nobody can explain to you how it really works. You have a market and an assumption that supply will meet demand and demand will somehow meet or create supply. Nobody can explain to you what the market is or what the market represents. The market is the illusion on which the whole belief system of capitalism is based. It's this belief in capitalism which makes everything in a relationship transactional. I need something, you have something, or you need something, I have. The only problem is that, All too often, in any transaction someone wins and someone loses. For someone to make a profit, someone else somewhere else has to lose out, or experience poverty. There's no equanimity or equality in the relationship, because someone has to gain or make a profit, and because someone makes a profit, someone else has to lose out, so there always has to be poverty. But for this reason capitalism is rather efficient when it comes to social conditioning, because it is based on desire creation, desire building and fear motivation. It is for this very reason that financial security isn't possible. But see, you are told that it is possible and also, just as important, that other people achieve financial security. So you assume that you too can achieve financial security, even though in actual reality you can't. Partly because financial security is always some future objective, and partly because whenever you think you have to deal with the polarity of fear and desire. Now the issue at stake for most people on this planet is that, before you have had time to build any meaningful environmental or even social awareness of what's going on, you are forced or coerced into making various life-defining changes through development of ego. You are expected to develop a future, have some kind of purpose or plan in life, be responsible, be mature, and somehow achieve this financial security or stability. You are told or taught to believe that you can be anyone you want to be, and do whatever you want to do in life. But the reality is completely different. Society is based on a paradigm or pattern of social and cultural beliefs. This pattern or paradigm is developed for the comfort and convenience of the fixed entities in society, organizations, institutions, the government, organized religion, school, and so on. Who you are or can become, especially in terms of ego and identity, in modern society is based on conditionality. Therefore your ego and identity is always conditional to who you can become relative to this paradigm of social and cultural beliefs. Usually who you can become is determined by the social status or place your parents have in the social hierarchy, so by the time you're 8 or 9 years old it's all pretty much settled. By the time you reach adulthood and enter what is known as the real world, or the world of work and financial independence, due to the inequality of the system you're generally on the losing side. Where you lose out is through work. For sure you earn money, get given a wage or salary, perhaps some additional benefits if you're lucky, but what you trade for whatever you get from work is your life. For 40, 50, 60 years or so you have to devote your life to work, for at least 5 days a week, from early in the morning to the afternoon or evening. Irrespective of whether you're actually working or not, the focus of your life will be on work. This is where you face what can only be seen as a major life choice. You face the choice prematurely, but it is a choice which at some point you will need to make. You can go with the flow, with your conditioned mind, and just do whatever it takes to get that income and money. But keep in mind that for many older people their major regret in life is that they spent so much time having to work. It is also a fact that your life is defined by a finite amount of energy and time is the one thing in life you cannot get back. Many people tend to assume that they have job security and that job security equates in some way to financial security. This is not necessarily true. You could be made redundant. You could have to relocate or change your home and be unable to find the same job or occupation. You might also develop a disability or health issue and end up not being able to do the work you can find opportunities for, while of course not finding opportunities for the work you can do. There is also the other level of reality, actual reality, which also determines the nature and quality of your life experience. I'm referring to the level of reality which lies beyond all social conditioning. The reality which lies beyond your ego and identity, but which corresponds to being. All life starts from either a seed or an egg. That seed or egg contains everything necessary for a complete life cycle. The key to life is to find a balance or compromise between the natural and the social, between actual levels of reality and conceptual levels of reality, and to find a way of living your life on the basis of a balanced perspective without creating any major life regrets. The issue here is that there's very little vocational advice that's not conformist to the system. Quite often you can get told to do what you love. But what if you love writing poetry? There is not much demand for poets in this capitalist-based system. You might have noticed this. What you need to do is to find something which meets 3 basic criteria. The first thing you need to think about is doing what many people appreciate you doing for them. The second thing you need to think about is doing something which you find easy to do, which you can do effortlessly for which other people appreciate you doing. The third thing you need to think about is finding something that you can do for other people which you find pleasant to do. Therefore, when thinking about what to do in life, you need to find something you can do which is easy, pleasant, and which many other people appreciate you doing for them. The reasoning behind this is that life is based on relationship, so irrespective of what level of reality you're on, you still have to connect to others and your environment. The reason why you are born in the first place is to go through experiences or experience relationships, and have further experiences through those relationships. Therefore, it's important to figure out your natural aptitudes and the things you have a natural aptitude for. If you base what you do in life on your natural aptitudes, what you find easy, pleasant, and what other people appreciate you doing for them, you're far more likely to be able to do this throughout your life. If you can do this, at any point in your life, then you will have no need to seek either job security or financial security, because you will be able to find other people who need or want you to do what you can do for them. This is a major part of overcoming your social conditioning to become who you really are naturally. It is very difficult to overcome your social conditioning to become a fully fledged human being if you are constantly and heavily invested in a more artificial social role, or worse, you have to constantly conform to capitalist definitions of market-defined roles in order to get an income. You might want to consider whether you can do retail for 60 years or, say, flipping burgers for 60 years. Not that there's anything wrong with retail or flipping burgers, but if you don't have aptitude for such things, it kind of makes your working life something of an endurance test. This is like trying to run a marathon if you have no natural aptitude for running. There is no reason to make your life harder for unnecessary reasons. You will get a lot of spiritual advice telling you to get rid of your ego. But see, your ego is based on thought, which is based on memory, and you cannot get rid of memory. Nor can you stop thinking. If you follow that advice, to get rid of your ego, all you will achieve is to reinforce your ego and build a stronger ego, reinforcing all the illusions that come with it and your past social conditioning. Your ego is not meant to last, and in clinging to your ego as your sole awareness of reality will make your life more complicated, messier, and much harder. The whole point of developing an existential or spiritual dimension to your life is to make your life simpler and easier, not harder and more complicated. There's a certain sense in learning how to treat your ego lightly, and to inhabit your social roles with the same lightness and awareness. There is no security in either your social conditioning or in your ego structure. To believe that there is, that will only lead you down a path of deception or self-deception.